Tonight, the world outside is loud. But in here, amongst the dust and the old paper, there is only silence. So, find a place to rest. Let your shoulders drop. Unclench your jaw. Let the darkness of the room become a heavy, comforting blanket. We are going to travel back to the very beginning, long before the cities of man, long before the forests grew, and long before the first sunrise. In the beginning, there was the void. The Greeks called it chaos. Do not think of chaos as a storm. Think of it as a yawn, a gaping, endless mouth of nothingness. It was a place where gravity did not exist, a deep, dark ocean of silence that stretched on forever. For eons, there was only this silent drifting. But then, from the heaviness of the void, something solid began to form, like an island rising from a dark sea. This was Gaia, the earth, the mother. She was not a woman, not yet. She was the bedrock. She was the deep valleys waiting to be filled with water. She was the stone bones of the world. She was vast, and she was alone. Below her, the void deepened into Tartarus, a pit so black and so deep that if you dropped a stone, it would fall for 9 days and 9 nights before hitting the bottom. And binding them together was Eros, love, or perhaps gravity, the force that pulls one thing to another, the force that ensures nothing can remain truly alone forever. Gaia, in her solitude, looked up, and from her own essence, she spun a veil of blue and black, pinned with glittering diamonds. She created Uranus, the sky. Uranus was magnificent. He was the dome of the heavens, and he covered Gaia completely. Everywhere the earth stretched, the sky was there, pressing down upon her. They were locked in a permanent embrace. There was no space between the ground and the air. No room for trees to grow. No room for the wind to blow. Just the heavy, crushing weight of the sky upon the earth. In this suffocating darkness, children were born. First came the Titans, 12 of them, majestic beings of raw power. Oceanus, the river that circles the world. Hyperion, the burning light. Mnemosyne, the keeper of memory. And the youngest? Kronos. But they could not leave the womb. Uranus, their father, hated them. He looked at their jagged shapes, their raw strength, and he felt fear. He pushed them back. He would not let them emerge into the light. He trapped them deep within the caverns of Gaia's body. Then came the monsters, the Cyclopes with their single burning eye, the Hecatoncheires, beasts with 50 heads and 100 thrashing hands. Uranus loathed them even more. He chained them in the darkest pits of their mother. Gaia groaned, not from the weight of the mountains, but from the pain of her imprisoned children. She could feel their rage growing inside her earth. She could feel the pressure building, like a volcano waiting to erupt. She knew that the sky had to be pushed away, or else nothing would ever truly live. Deep in the crushing dark, Gaia visited her children. She whispered to them in the language of shifting tectonic plates. She showed them a weapon she had fashioned. It was not a sword. It was a sickle. A curved blade made of gray adamant, the hardest stone in existence, jagged and cruel. "Who among you," she whispered, "has the courage to free us? Who will stand against the sky?" Oceanus remained silent. Hyperion turned away. The Titans were immortal, yes, but they were afraid. Uranus was vast. he was the entire world above them. Only one stepped forward: Kronos, the youngest, the most ambitious. He took the gray flint sickle. His hands were steady, his eyes were cold. He said, "Mother, I will do it." They waited for nightfall. As Uranus descended, bringing the blanket of night to rest upon Gaia, thinking he was safe, thinking he was the master of all things, Kronos struck. It happened in a single, terrible moment. Kronos reached out from his hiding place. He grabbed his father. And with one swing of the adamantine sickle, he severed the link between heaven and earth. Uranus screamed. It was a sound that tore the universe apart. For the first time, the sky recoiled. He pulled away from the earth, rising higher and higher in his agony. And in that gap, in that new space between the ground and the stars, the air rushed in. The wind began to howl. The world took its first breath. But violence always births more violence. The blood of Uranus fell upon the earth, and from that blood, the Furies sprang up. Spirits of vengeance with eyes that wept blood. They would ensure that no crime against a parent would ever go unpunished. And some of his essence fell into the sea. It churned the white foam. It swirled and danced on the waves. And from this violent act, something impossibly beautiful rose from the water. Aphrodite, the goddess of beauty. Born from a weapon, born from sea foam, walking onto the shore of Cyprus. The sky was now distant. The Titans were free. And Kronos stood tall, the king of the new world. But as he looked at the sickle in his hand, he did not know that he had just started a cycle that would one day come for him, too. With the sky pushed away, Kronos became the king of the cosmos, and thus began what the poets call the Golden Age. It sounds beautiful, doesn't it? A time when crops grew without farming, when there were no laws because there was no crime, no winter, no aging. But looking back from the archives, we see the truth. It was not a paradise. It was a prison of perfection. Nothing changed, nothing died, and therefore, nothing truly lived. It was a world trapped in amber. Kronos ruled alongside his sister Rhea, but he did not rule with peace in his heart. He ruled with a shadow hanging over his throne. You see, just before Uranus fled into the upper atmosphere, he cursed his son. He whispered a prophecy that would haunt Kronos forever. You too shall fall. Just as you betrayed your father, so shall your children betray you. Kronos was the titan of time, but now time was afraid of the future. He looked at Rhea. He saw her belly swell with life, and he made a choice. He decided that he would not be Uranus. He would not just imprison his children in the earth. He would make sure they never saw the light at all. Rhea gave birth to her first child, a daughter, Hestia. She was perfect, the goddess of the hearth, of home, of warmth. Rhea held her, expecting to see a father's pride. Instead, she saw a mouth. Kronos did not hesitate. He did not chew. He did not act out of hunger. He acted out of necessity. He opened his great titanic jaw, and he swallowed Hestia whole. Imagine that silence. One moment, a crying infant, The next, nothing. Just the heavy breathing of a king who thinks he has cheated fate. But the prophecy was not broken. It was only delayed. Rhea birthed another, Demeter, the goddess of the harvest, swallowed. Then Hera, the queen of heavens, swallowed. Then Hades, the lord of the unseen, swallowed. Then Poseidon, the shaker of the earth, swallowed. 5 children, 5 gods, all living inside the stomach of their father. They were immortal, so they could not die. They existed in a cramped, acid darkness, fully conscious, waiting, growing, hating. Rhea was devastated. She was the mother of gods, yet she had no children to hold. She roamed the palace like a ghost, her grief turning slowly into a cold, hard rage. She realized that to save life, she had to deceive time itself. When she became pregnant with her 6th child, Rhea ran. She fled to the island of Crete. Under the cover of a storm, deep in a cave on Mount Ida, she gave birth to a son. She named him Zeus. But Cronus was waiting. He demanded the child. Rhea did something desperate. She took a stone, a jagged rock from the earth. She wrapped it in swaddling clothes. She held it to her chest as if it were a fragile life. She presented the bundle to Cronus. The king of Titans did not check. He did not look at the face. His arrogance had made him blind. He snatched the bundle and swallowed it in one gulp. The heavy stone slid down his throat, settling in his stomach alongside his 5 captive children. He sat back on his throne, satisfied. He believed he had won. He believed the cycle was broken. But far away, on the island of Crete, the real baby cried. To hide the sound of the future king, Rhea placed guardians outside the cave, the Corides. Whenever the baby Zeus cried, they would dance. They would clash their spears against their shields, creating a wall of noise. Clang, clang, clang. A violent lullaby to drown out the sound of a god. And there, in the damp shadows of the cave, fed on the milk of a goat named Amalthea and the honey of wild bees, Zeus grew. He grew strong. He grew angry. He was the only god who knew what it meant to be free, and he was coming for his father. Years passed. The baby in the cave became a man. Zeus left the island of Crete, not with an army, but with a plan. He knew he could not defeat time with force. He had to use trickery. He infiltrated the court of his father, disguised as a cupbearer. Can you see him? Walking in the shadows of the Titans, pouring their wine, listening to their booming voices, waiting for the perfect moment. He prepared a drink for Kronos. It was not poison. It was something far stranger. A mixture of mustard and wine, a potion designed to force the body to reject what it held inside. Kronos drank deep, and then the great Titan bent over. His stomach heaved. And in a strange reversal of time, the past came back up. First came the stone, the decoy that had saved Zeus. It crashed onto the earth, landing in a place called Delphi, where it would sit for eternity as the center of the world. Then came the children: Poseidon, Hades, Hera, Demeter, Hestia. They emerged not as babies, but as fully grown gods. They had spent their entire lives in the darkness of their father's belly, dreaming of light. And now, standing on the mountaintop, breathing the fresh air for the first time, they were ready. 6 gods against the Titans. The lines were drawn. The silence was broken. The war that followed lasted for 10 years. The Greeks called it the Titanomachy. But do not imagine human armies marching in lines. This was a war of landscapes, a war of geology. On one side, Mount Othrys, the fortress of the Titans. On the other, Mount Olympus, the stronghold of the gods. For a decade, the earth shook. When the Titans attacked, they threw boulders the size of cities. When the gods retaliated, the air itself seemed to burn. But from a distance, say, if you were watching from the stars, it would look like a slow, heavy storm. A low, rumbling thunder that never stopped. A vibration in the ground that lulled the mortals to an uneasy sleep. It was a stalemate. Neither side could win. The Titans were too strong. The gods were too fast. Zeus realized he needed to break the balance. He remembered the old stories of his grandmother, Gaia. He remembered the monsters that Uranus had locked away in the deepest pit. So Zeus descended, down past the roots of the mountains, down into the gloom of Tartarus. There, in the absolute dark, he found them. The Cyclopes and the 100-handed ones, ancient, forgotten, and full of rage. Zeus offered them freedom in exchange for their help. And in the darkness, the Cyclopes, the master smiths, forged a gift for their liberator. They did not forge a sword. They reached into the storm clouds and pulled out fire. They hammered the lightning until it was solid. They crafted the thunderbolt. When Zeus returned to the surface, the sky changed. For the first time, lightning cracked the air. The 100-handed ones tore up entire cliffs and rained them down upon the Titans. The sheer volume of rock and fire overwhelmed the old order. The Titans, the lords of the Golden Age, finally fell. The war was over. The dust settled. The Titans were bound in chains and cast down into Tartarus, guarded by the very monsters they once despised. Except for one, Atlas, the general of the Titans. His punishment was special. He was not sent to the dark. He was sent to the edge of the world. He was tasked with holding up the sky, keeping it forever separated from the earth. A burden of infinite weight carried on weary shoulders for all eternity. Now the world belonged to the 3 brothers, Zeus, Poseidon, and Hades. They had a kingdom, but they did not know who would rule what. They did not fight. They did not argue. They did something remarkably simple. They drew lots. They placed 3 tokens into a helmet and shook it. It was a game of chance. Fate, blind and impartial, would decide. Zeus drew the first lot. He won the sky, the rain, the clouds, the thunder, and the high throne of Olympus. He became the king. Poseidon drew the second lot. He won the sea, the crashing waves, the deep trenches, the moody, shifting tides. And Hades, poor Hades, he drew the last lot, the short straw. He was given the underworld, the realm of the dead, the damp, silent halls beneath the earth. He did not complain. He took his prize and descended into the shadows, leaving the sun behind. The earth itself, Gaia, was left common to all 3. a neutral ground where their powers would mix. And so, the map was drawn, the borders were set. The chaos of the beginning had finally been organized into a system. The world as we know it had arrived. But a world needs more than just rulers. It needs life. It needs us. The gods sat high on Olympus. They drank nectar. They listened to the music of Apollo's lyre. They had everything. But the world below, the vast forests and the green plains, was empty. The animals were there, yes. The lions had their claws, the birds had their wings, the turtles had their shells. Epimetheus, the titan of afterthought, had given out all the gifts of nature to the beasts. But there was no one to look up at the stars and wonder why. Enter Prometheus. His name means forethought. He was a titan who had sided with Zeus, but his heart did not belong to the palaces of gold. His heart was with the soil. He went down to the riverbank in a place called Panopeus. He knelt in the mud. He took the clay, wet and heavy, and he began to shape it. He did not make us like the animals, with heads looking down at the grass. He made us stand upright, like the gods, so that our eyes would naturally look toward the heavens. But we were just statues, cold, still, lifeless dolls of mud. It was Athena, the goddess of wisdom, who breathed life into the clay. She gave us a spirit. She gave us the butterfly soul. And so, the first humans opened their eyes. But it was not a happy awakening. We were naked. We were soft. We had no fur to keep us warm, no sharp teeth to defend ourselves. We shivered in the long nights, huddled together in caves, terrified of the shadows. Zeus looked down at these miserable creatures and shrugged. He wanted us to remain weak. He wanted us to be nothing more than pets. Or worse, ants. Prometheus watched his creation suffer, and he could not bear it. He knew what we needed. We needed the one thing Zeus had forbidden. We needed fire. Fire was power. Fire was technology. With fire, we could cook food, forge tools, harden clay, and push back the darkness. So, Prometheus climbed. He climbed the treacherous paths of Mount Olympus, unseen by the other gods. He crept into the workshop of Hephaestus, the smith god. He took a fennel stalk, a dry, hollow reed. He reached into the divine hearth and stole a single ember, just a spark. He hid the glowing coal inside the stalk and hurried back down to the freezing world of men. Imagine that moment. The first campfire. The orange glow dancing on the walls of a cave. The warmth spreading through cold limbs. The fear in our eyes turning to wonder. Civilization began not with a crown, but with a spark. Looking down from his high throne, Zeus saw the lights flickering on the surface of the earth. He saw the smoke rising, and he knew. His rage was colder than any winter. Prometheus had not just stolen fire, he had given power to the powerless. He had leveled the playing field. The punishment for the theft of fire had to be eternal. It had to be a warning. Zeus ordered his servants, force and violence, to drag Prometheus to the ends of the earth, to the Caucasus Mountains, a desolate range of jagged peaks where the wind cuts like a knife. There, Hephaestus, reluctantly, for he admired the Titan, forged chains that could not be broken. He bound Prometheus to the highest rock, hands stretched wide, exposed to the sun, the frost, and the storm. But chains were not enough. Every day, as the sun reached its peak, a shadow would fall over the mountain. A great eagle, the hound of Zeus, would descend. It would land on the Titan's chest. It would tear open his flesh, and it would eat his liver. It is a gruesome image, but in the logic of myth, the liver was the seat of human emotion. Prometheus was being consumed by the very thing he felt for us, compassion. And because he was immortal, he could not die. Every night, under the freezing stars, his skin would knit back together. His liver would grow back. The wound would heal, just in time for the sun to rise and for the eagle to return. Day after day, year after year, century after century. Listen closely to the wind in the mountains. Some say it is just the air moving through the stones. Others say it is the breathing of the Titan, enduring the pain, waiting for a savior who would not come for 1,000 years. He suffered so that we could be warm. He burned so that we could see. Prometheus was bound. Fire was stolen. But Zeus was not satisfied. He looked down at the flickering campfires of humanity, and he decided that men should not just suffer from the cold, they should suffer from complication. He commissioned a new creation, not from clay and mud, but from beauty and deceit. Hephaestus molded her form, perfect, graceful, impossible to look away from. Athena clothed her in silver robes. Aphrodite shed grace upon her head and cruel longing into her heart. Hermes gave her a voice of lies. They named her Pandora, which means all gifted. She was sent down not to Prometheus, who was too wise to accept gifts from Zeus, but to his brother, Epimetheus. Epimetheus. His name means afterthought. He was the one who acted first and thought later. Prometheus had warned him, never accept a gift from the Olympian Zeus. But when Pandora arrived at his door, Epimetheus looked into her eyes, and he forgot the warning. He forgot the fear. He welcomed her in. And with her, she brought a jar. Not a box, as later translations would say, but a pithos, a large earthen storage jar, heavy, sealed tight with a lid. She was told only one thing: never open it. But the gods had given her curiosity. It was an itch in her mind, a whisper in her ear. Why give a gift that cannot be seen? What treasure was so precious that it had to be buried in the dark? One quiet evening, while Epimetheus slept, Pandora stood before the jar. The silence of the house was heavy. The clay felt cool under her fingers. She told herself she would just take a peek, just a glimpse. She lifted the heavy lid. It was not gold that came out. It was not jewels. It was a shadow, a swarm. From the mouth of the jar, a cloud of invisible creatures rushed out. They buzzed like angry wasps. They were the spites. Old age, sickness, jealousy, greed, toil, sorrow. Before this moment, humanity had lived without these things. We worked, but we did not toil. We grew old, but we did not wither. We died, but we did not suffer. Now the air was filled with them. They flew out the window, scattering across the earth, finding their way into every home, every heart, every future generation. Pandora, terrified, slammed the lid back down. She pressed her weight against it, trying to undo what had been done. But the room was empty. The evils were gone. She looked inside the jar. Only one thing remained. Crouched at the very bottom, caught just before it could escape. Elpis. Hope. Why was hope in a jar of evils? Is hope a blessing? Or is it the cruelest evil of all? The thing that prolongs our suffering by making us believe it will get better? The Greeks never answered that. They just left us with the jar. And so, the Golden Age ended. The Silver Age passed. And here we are, in the Iron Age, living with the fire of Prometheus and the complicated gifts of Pandora. But tonight, those stories are just echoes. They are trapped in the pages of this book. We are closing the file on the beginning of things. The Titans are asleep in the deep earth. The gods are silent on their mountain. And the spites, let them buzz outside your window. They cannot enter here. Here, in the archives, it is safe. It is quiet. Take a deep breath now. Breathe in the scent of old paper and rain. Hold it and let it go. Feel the weight of your body sinking into your bed. Let your feet be heavy. Let your hands be still. The maps are rolled up. The candles are blown out. The history is written. There is nothing left to solve tonight. Nothing left to do but drift. Thank you for visiting Terra Incognita Archives. I am John. Good night.